Okay, man. All right. Well, yeah, let's do this, man. And then if anybody wants to join, hi, this is Aaron and Hanley. I'm the social media officer for FCBC Walnuts. Hanley, of course, is the lead English pastor, and we're trying something new, trying to go online live via Zoom to Facebook, and we do this thing called Walnut Commentary, where we just kind of talk and have some fun. Hanley, let's just get it out of the way right now. You emailed me about MacArthur's church, but do you know exactly what's going on, or is there any updates that you want to just talk about briefly?
I don't. I know that they went back to court maybe 4 times, if not more.
Yeah.
And it seems like at certain levels, Grace Church is winning
Mm-hmm.
in terms of their battle for religious freedom and the government or the county not being able to shut them down.
Yeah.
And then I guess the county continues to take them to court. So that's created a lot of buzz across our nation, across evangelicalism. And if you notice that MacArthur is featured now on news syndicates, he's on those evening clips with CNN.
I
Fox.
saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
He was on the Charlie Kirk show.
You know,
He's all over the place.
He's been on what's that guy's name? He's been on talk shows before. But I feel like he's really like kind of spreading out a little bit more now, doing more things. Do you watch every single thing that comes out whenever news like that breaks?
Usually if somebody messages it to me, either on Facebook Messenger or on text, like one of our church members, then I'll take a look at it. If it comes up and I have some time, I'll look at it. But you know, one of my friends sent me the interview link where Babylon B interviewed Phil Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
It was pretty entertaining. It was pretty good. I mean, that kind of gives you an insight, a softer version, I think, of what they're really talking about. So I think there's a lot of things that are said very strongly, publicly. Even Phil Johnson, you know, he's very strong. But you'll hear different things. You'll hear Phil Johnson say, yeah, you know, we're encouraged and we support all the churches that are reopening outdoors. But here's why we can't do that, right? He gives a reason.
Yeah. And for those of you who are watching, and if you're not familiar with Babylon B, it's actually a Christian satire site. When Phil Johnson went on, were they like joking around, or were they? I mean, was he his usual snarkiness kind of?
Well, of course, there's going to be some of Phil's snarkiness and satire. There's obviously Babylon B. Those guys are comedians. And they're going to come with their tone. And so it was fun to hear, but there's also some seriousness. Obviously, you know, we take a little bit more of a conservative position when it comes to reopening. But I mean, Grace is going to do what Grace feels convicted to do. So that's a whole different discussion we want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for just kind of being willing to talk about this. I think, you know, Christian, what's it called? The Christian world at large, or the evangelical culture, you know, mainstream evangelical culture, how the news presents Christians and things. I mean, it's good that we're aware of it, but here at FCBC Walnut, we do have our own things that we need to worry about and issues that we need to speak to. We're doing drive-in worship services. Is that what we're doing? Hanley, how is it, man? I'm telling you, man, it's hard for me. I'm sure there's other people like me where you got kids and I can't make it. I mean, we had it playing, but obviously I can't like sit there and like take notes and things, you know, we're doing the kids. But how was it for you, man? I saw you did like you did a sermon actually. You were preaching today.
Yeah. You know, I felt really good about it just because we're able to see somewhat of though fragmented, somewhat of the visible church there gathered. You have people coming and they're serving, and you see the body of Christ at work. And it is a very different experience. It's exhilarating actually to be able to preach to people and see their faces. And you can actually hear reactions, responses. Yeah. You know, obviously I think our AV team did a great job just getting the video, the audio up and everything, but we had issues that are not related to the AV end, but to the Wi-Fi. So if you were watching at home and you have good Wi-Fi, I don't think you had a problem. But I think those who are watching in the parking lot, it became choppy at times, and that became very evident in the beginning of the service. So they told me to project, which is no problem. So I didn't feel like I had to scream. I was just preaching, putting my inner Whitfield on. You know, like I'm not gifted like George Whitfield, but you know, there was a time where preachers needed to preach open air.
Mm-hmm.
without an amplification system. So
Yeah. I mean,
I
Jesus.
yeah, so I just preached, you know,
Yeah.
and I had prepared my sermon with very simple points, as well as internalizing what I already pre-recorded on Wednesday. So
Mhm.
just being able to preach it to the people, I think it felt great, and just to project. And we also had a little umbrella. It's
Yeah, I
for
saw that.
a huge umbrella to block the
Yeah.
sun.
Yeah.
But that also acts as like an amplification system.
Oh, funny.
It's
Funny.
not as good as the wooden pieces. I don't know if you've ever been to the South, but if you've ever been to these older traditional church buildings, or if you go to the chapel at Southern
Yeah.
Seminary, one of the chapels,
Yeah.
you know, they have this really nice pulpit, but on top there'd be this wooden, I don't know what you call it, this thing that's connected to the ceiling.
Sure. Right. Right.
That's
Right.
that's basically for amplification,
Yeah.
you know, to go out. So that worked well.
Are you, I mean, it's hot today. It's hot today. Are you sweating? Are you, yeah, like, how do you feel? Or are you just
Oh,
in the zone? Like, are you just kind of like, don't worry
yeah,
about
I mean, you're sweating, and this is TMI, but I'll just say it in the nicest way
it?
possible.
Yeah, sure.
I'm wearing khakis,
Okay.
and everything inside is wet. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So if
Okay.
you're from Texas or Florida or South Asia, I mean, this is
Yeah, just,
why
right.
you don't do outdoor services, right?
Right, right,
But
right.
California is not too bad. I mean,
Yeah.
but by God's grace, I actually said in the sermon, I said I'm gonna take a moment just to thank Jesus for the breeze. There's actually a breeze, and there was shade, so there is no problem. I would do it again. And I actually ended right before 9 o'clock, which was
Nice.
our time. So I didn't know how long I was going, but I think I feel like the outdoor sermon was probably better than my Wednesday sermon, because
Mm-mm.
my Wednesday sermon, I had just crammed it and got it done Tuesday night, and rolled in Wednesday morning just to preach it. It's probably choppy a little bit on that end.
Yeah.
And today it was like the second time preaching it. So
Mm.
yeah, and I got to interact with the crowd a little more, or the audience a little more. So I thought that was helpful. I mean, to your point, at the at-home audience, I addressed that a little bit. I addressed that a little bit in the beginning,
Right.
and I mentioned there's people at home, and that's actually, we're one family. And so I talked about how the Sunday gathering is just like a traditional American family. If they were to do Sunday night dinners,
Mm-hmm.
it's important. People should make a priority to reserve it if that's what your family practices. You
Yeah.
know, everybody should prioritize Sunday dinner. You reserve
Mm-hmm.
it, and you're there and you participate, and it's symbolic, and you gather around the table. And as Christians, we gather around the Lord's Supper and the Word of God, etc. But those family dinners, those Sunday dinners, don't make up or make or break your family.
Right.
99% of your family life, the relationships, the conflict resolution, life itself happens outside of the Sunday table. So that's I introduced that a little bit. And we'll talk a little bit about more come September. Yeah,
Yeah, you're giving a little bit of a teaser right there,
I
but
am. I
yeah,
am.
Hanley's got something that we're gonna move forward with, and I think it's good. I think it's good, and I hear you on that family dinner thing. Yeah, man, we gotta protect our time as families, but also, like, what you're saying is that there is a special time for Sundays, but family is not just that Sunday dinner time. That's what you're saying, right? Like,
That's
when
what I'm
you're
saying.
family,
Yeah.
your family
Right.
throughout the week. That doesn't stop what you do as a family, but there is a special time on Sundays. But it's throughout the week, and yeah, I'm looking forward to what you have to share with us in terms of that, man. I want to go back to what you said about your recording on Wednesday. So everybody knows that we still do have the normal recorded YouTube videos available where you're in the Mac, you're preaching to nobody live, really. I mean, the AV guys, but you're recording live, and that's what I use. That's what I personally use to view it. And if I can't view it for whatever reason, I just want everybody to know that our sermon audio is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can always find it there. And so, Hanley, thanks for literally preaching twice. You're doing it on Wednesday and you're going on Sunday. And on Sundays, you're preaching to people in their cars. Now, are they staying in their cars? I'm assuming they're in their cars in their air conditioning. And can you see them? Like, are you really looking at their faces?
So we have a little bit of everything, and basically we have certain people with their windows down, because, like I said, today the Wi-Fi wasn't strong, so a lot of
Mm-hmm.
them rolled their windows down, and they could hear me preaching, and
Mm-hmm.
they could hear the music, and some people move outside of their cars,
Okay.
but they're not right next to, I guess, another person that's outside of their car, right?
Right.
So obviously there's going to be a little bit of socialization, but as far as I saw, everybody kept some distance. I don't think it's 6 feet across the board all the way, but people are wearing face masks.
Okay.
So I mean, that's already pretty good. People are outdoors,
Right.
and there's a breeze, and they're in the large parking lot. So this is not an enclosed area. And so
Hmm.
as I'm preaching, there's actually people standing outside their cars,
Okay.
and they're standing the entire time. That's awesome. There's people with umbrellas,
Yeah.
and there's people who brought their lawn chairs out. So they brought lawn chairs out, they put it in the parking lot right next to their car because
Yeah.
we socially distance or physically distance the cars as well. So there's an empty parking spot next to you
I see. I
on
see.
both sides, and
Hmm.
people can use that. And today afterwards, there was a little bit of fellowship, but we told people try to be safe. And for the most part, our people are really good. Next week, it's going to be tough. So as soon as I'm done, I'll give a benediction. I think that people have to leave right away because Mandarin's coming in
I see.
for a drive-in at 9:30. So we go 8 to 9. Mandarin
Mm-hmm.
comes in at 9:30.
Wow. How do you feel that? Do you feel that this is good for our congregation?
I do think I feel it, I do feel it's good because I do think at some point we do need to reopen in some way. I feel like this is the safest way
Okay.
to get going.
Okay.
I think there are some who, for better or worse, I think they feel like we do need to be the church in the sense of standing up and being the church despite government orders, and we're not going to go all the way and go indoors right now where
Mhm.
that's not what we're able to do right now, but at least to reopen, I think that satisfies that bone, and then that can lead into individual conversations, right, that are
Mhm.
more discipleship oriented. I do think there's a certain demographic of our church that's just an older generation. uh, these are Jesus loving people who their entire lives all they've been used to is in-person church,
Mhm.
and even outside of Sunday, small groups at church and things like that. And so when you take that church away from them, they're not able to pivot as naturally online like the millennials or Gen Z, and as a result, this brings them some encouragement. So if it can provide some encouragement, even for them to drive in or to step outside their cars, I mean, if
Yeah.
it's safe, I think it offers that benefit. I think what we want to be careful about is that our church, by God's grace, we have a building and we have a new building coming, and
Mhm.
we're very building centric.
Yeah.
Our church is also very program oriented, which we've tried to make those programs into disciple making ministries. But a lot of what happens in our church is orientated around Friday night and Sundays. And
Yeah.
so when that gets taken away from you, or when it's tampered with in this way,
Yeah.
then certain people get discouraged, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
and if we're reminded that church is hashtag more than Sunday,
Sure.
if church is not just something that we attend, but it's who we are as people,
Yeah.
then this is where we build a bridge, where there's these Sunday gatherings. They're not ideal. They're not what we're used to,
Mhm.
but they're going to hold us over while we recognize that 90% of our ministries are going to happen outside of Sundays, whether that be small groups meeting in safer, smaller physical spaces, like
Yeah.
10 people in a backyard with
Yeah.
distance and face masks, or for the people who are online. So now we're looking at a church that's both online and outdoors.
Yeah.
So it's nice that it both starts with the O,
Okay.
outdoors and online.
There's so much more we need to talk about that. I feel like once you launch this more than Sundays thing, I'm sure you'll get into it. But I'm just going to ask you right now, how did our church become this way, where we were building centric, where we were program oriented? And was that how was it supposed to be that way? Like, was that right of it to happen like that?
I mean, I'm just answering from my own opinion,
I know.
and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
so
You're talking
I
about
don't.
FCBC Walnut. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, I think the word program is not necessarily a bad word, right?
Okay.
Because when you consider when the word program was inserted, you think about the history of a church in America, and anywhere else you can think of the institutional church. You think of gathering at a physical space, and for hundreds of years in America, you have a physical church building where that was the center of your spiritual life. So if you went to meet with the pastor, he either meets in your home or a church. You get married at church.
Mhm.
At least back then you did. You had your funerals at church, and maybe buried in a cemetery site, maybe next to the church,
Which was next to the
or a
church.
farm.
Yeah.
Right,
Right. Mhm.
right. So, and then even your community activities, you might gather at the church, and the church became the center of community life. And so it makes sense that there is a central building. What we have to remember, though, is that the church is the people. So somewhere along the lines, I don't think FCBC Walnut ever purposely try to prioritize the building, but when you do have the blessing of the building, things can be really tied to the building.
Yeah.
Right. And so that can lead into all kinds of other challenges and issues, right? Like everything has to go through the building. And if it's not at the building, then it's not church to some people, or it's not the same. Or when the building gets closed down, then it's not the same. So that's one aspect. The word program, I think that came into play when people began to move away from family worship, and then you have things where it's a supplement, like Sunday school. It's just a program, just like anything's called a program. It's you could change the word and call it a ministry, but if it's an organized ordeal, then it's called a program. So I don't think program in itself is a bad word. I think that when you prioritize the process of getting it done, and when the program becomes running through the curriculum and running through the schedule, and sometimes when that becomes routine and tradition, and if you forget about the people part of it and the ministry part of it, where then it goes to just plug and play versus discipleship, that's where programs come into danger. But there's no problem with using the word programs. And the bigger the church is, the more you're going to have in terms of ministries. You're going to have children's ministries, student ministries, elderly fellowship. All of these are programs. Even counseling is a type of program.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
And I'm not trying to knock on any of them. To be fair, you and I grew up at FCBC Walnut, I think it's fair to say, and we know the history. So we know that FCBC Walnut did not always have this building where we're at on Fairway, right? I mean, we met at the school? We met at the school first.
Schools, yeah.
In the school first, and we were a plant from FCBC LA. So it's not like oh, FCBC Walnut was conceived on its own. No, we were an offshoot from FCBC LA. So we have a history. And sometimes that's just the way how the ball rolls when it gets to us. And then you and I grew up in the programs ourselves, right? I mean, I grew up in Unicoi, and at that time, Unicoi was still kind of new. It went through different phases before it was Unicoi. I think I was one of the first classes to have it be called Unicoi at one point. GAP didn't exist at one point in time. Definitely Awana wasn't here. We had RAs and GAs, right? And so, you and I grew up in this type of thing. And so in some sense, we're a product of what our history was. And we're dealing with some of it right now because of the pandemic and what COVID is doing to our church. But I think overall, it's a good thing. What do you feel about the future for FCBC Walnut? I mean, we're obviously heading in a different direction right now. Things aren't going to be the same, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of COVID, why it disturbs, and why I think we need to look at our program orientation and how church has been disturbed is that for many people, when you're not able to continue these 30-year-old programs on campus and you move it online, it completely changes the comfort zone. Right, of how things are delivered, how things are done, and that's a pivot that's honestly easier for those who are more tech savvy or those from the younger generation. So that's where this is going to change, where we're going to have to do a little bit of both. We're going to have to do online a lot right now. Later, when we move back in, there's certain things are just going to be better online, and there's other things that we can bring back in and do in person. I think that's good. The other thing is that when some of these programs, you just can't bring them online. Right. It's just not the same. Right. And so to not have these programs, I think, has caused some people to be very discouraged. But positively, we're able to address that and then pivot. So I think what's going to happen is that when we reopen, at least the English congregation, we're really able now to look at which ministries align with our disciple-making vision and which ministries we're able to bring back, how to bring it back, who's going to bring it back, and which ministries can change and be online and be more impactful. So I think this is good. I'll just throw in another thing just to offend people. I think that COVID-19 has, I say that because I'm just pushing back against cancel culture. I said in my sermon this morning that I used the word hell, therefore I've been canceled. When I said that I was a Calvinist, I think 20 years ago, I got canceled already. What, you believe in predestination? Canceled. So if we just come out and say, hey, go ahead and cancel me, then I think at that point you don't have to be afraid to preach the gospel and to be canceled for positive reasons. But anyway, I just want to say this is going to be offensive to some people. Is that
Stumbling block.
COVID-19 in some ways is the grace of God, because I'm no stranger to see that the government will move, and with the shift in liberalism and just the course of society moving towards a post-Christian nation. We're already at that point.
Yeah.
You're going to see more censorship coming.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, I don't know about the United States in terms of nonprofit tax status for churches. If you want to hold some traditional biblical positions, right? So imagine if that just hit us and we had no COVID-19. What COVID-19 has done is it might be God's gentle way of allowing churches months and months and months of learning how to quickly decentralize if you need to and still remain the church.
Oh man.
And so if churches are meeting online, there can be censorship. But if churches are meeting in homes, these are private homes, right? And if there's no pandemic, you can host a home. And then you have the pastors and elders equipping the saints for the work of ministry. There can still be a central command, and there can still be pastors, but there's more bivocational leaders, all of that. This is all we're talking about, a decentralized ministry. And when you're able to centralize, you re-centralize, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not against the church building. I'm not against having a central ministry and a big church. I'm not against that. What I'm saying is, what happens if the government ever says, or persecution rises where you're not able to afford buildings because the tax benefits are taken away, or offering dips because of persecution and whatnot. When you think about the church scattered into homes, that is an indestructible church.
You're right.
That's a church that you cannot censor and you cannot shut down.
Yeah.
And so we need to be able to do this quickly, to go back in and back out, and to be able to shift on a dime.
Yeah.
And that's what you've been able to see. Okay, you guys can go indoors. Okay, we're ready to go indoors. Nope, you got to go back outdoors. Okay, you guys can come back in now, but 100 people. Okay, now you're going online. And I think what FCBC Walnut is learning is how to be the church that potentially, I'm not saying it's going to happen for sure, potentially can survive persecution.
Wow. Are you being prophetic right now?
I'm not charismatic in terms of my giftings in that way, so I don't think I'm being prophetic. I think I'm reading. I think I'm reading the New Testament.
Yeah,
I'm reading the New Testament as a historic premillennial.
Right.
And I'm looking at it.
Right.
And Jesus said that the last days are going to be bad, and he says the closer we get to his coming, there's going to be persecution for the church. So
when the perfect comes. I mean, to be real, you and I might not be able to do stuff like this. I mean, right now we're broadcasting live on Facebook right now. We might not be able to do this. Maybe the government, like in the future, is like, nope, churches can't do stuff like this either. I don't know. I'm just saying there's a lot of potential here for how things can pivot out. And yeah, I mean, you said we're meeting in homes, right? But we know countries where Christians aren't allowed to meet at homes either. So I think there's a lot of different things that can happen, and this can go a lot of different ways. It sounds a little bit morbid, but it's reality, right?
Yeah,
reality.
It is reality.
Do you think this could happen in our lifetime? In a non-prophetic sense, do you think this could happen in our lifetime?
I hope not. I really hope not. I really hope that we can continue to be the church. And as you can see, like we might disagree with MacArthur and Grace Church in terms of the seriousness of the pandemic.
Sure.
But I don't think we would disagree with him or Jack Hibbs that the freedom to worship God should be an inalienable right. Now, what we confirm and affirm is that the New Testament does not promise religious freedom.
Okay, for sure. Yeah.
That if religious freedom is given to us, that it ought to be stewarded. And so I'm hoping that by the grace of God, that we would be able to continue to steward this freedom and to push the gospel out as freely and as strongly as we can. Because I think, I hope that we continue to be able to preach the gospel.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think it's going to be really tough. And when we look at our brothers and sisters right now in places like East Asia, it just breaks my heart. But actually, we see that they're growing.
Yeah.
Despite the persecution.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, man. They might be stronger Christians than we are over here. I there's a lot that we need to discuss, Hanley. We need to talk about more than Sundays a little bit more. But I do thank you for coming on to do this experimental Zoom to Facebook Live. I think it worked out okay. I think we got some viewers coming in. We didn't announce it. We just said we're going to do it. Yeah, we can try it again some other time if you're open to it, man.
Yeah, sure, man.
Thanks for jumping on this time.
This is good.
Yeah, I want to respect your time. I'll talk to you later, man. Thanks.
All right.
All right, bye.